This is a Life Junkies Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the return of the Life Junkies Podcast. This is episode 15 and our Extreme Rules review. I say our Extreme Rules review, it's me on my own today. Chris is off in Northern Ireland covering the golf, so he is unavailable. He might be back on next week when I'm planning a wrestling-based podcast to talk about everything that's gone on since the last podcast. I think the last podcast we did, depending on what platform, was the WrestleMania preview. I don't think it went out on something. The podcast towards the end was sketchy. I apologise for hiatus and sketchiness of the podcast at the end. Basically, my living situation for the last few months has been fluid since February time. So I now have somewhere where I can stay for the next month. No, not next month, next year. I don't know why I said month. Yeah, I have an actual desk again that I can actually record on and work on and do show notes on, and hopefully start to blog again and get everything up and running. So anyway, so wrestling, we've seen AEW come to the forefront, still against my advice. Cody, man, you got to listen to me, man. And a lot of WWE news, a lot of people going back and forth. So yeah, I'd like to do a special next week if possible with Chris, sort of cover everything and talk back a bit about everything that's gone on. But until then, you have me here talking about Extreme Rules. A quick one about the sketchiness of the podcast was the end. I've still got the base file, so what I'm going to do at the end of this week, probably over the weekend, will be to see what is up where and what needs to go up where, and I'll post podcasts. So there'll be some podcasts popping up out of sync. We recorded a WrestleMania review that hasn't seen the light of day, so that'll be coming up. There'll be a preview on something, and there might have been another couple of ones that missed out. I also did record a mental health based podcast with Off Record, which is a charity that a good friend of mine works on. That was recorded and all sorted. It took ages to sort of pin them down because they're busy guys, but something went wrong with the audio on that one. It was no one's fault really, but I couldn't physically fix the audio on that, so that has had to go in the bin. I'm looking towards doing another one, but it's one of those things of, with the situation, with this just being a dude podcasting to a couple of people that watch it on YouTube, a couple of people that subscribe to us on whatever. And if I'm not sat here doing podcasts every week, I can't turn around to these guys that are doing important work and go, oh yeah, can you come and sit on a podcast with me? Well, that doesn't work. I waited until I got to a certain level with podcasts. I got past 10 shows, I was doing it regularly and we were going well. And I asked them, and then that went wrong. And that was meant to be the gateway to do more podcasts for them. But so once we've got this back on track, once I've started getting episodes out every week again, then hopefully I'll be able to approach them and go, could you take an hour out of your time to come and talk mental health with me? And I know it's something that they're very keen on, using social media and trying to get to people in ways like this. So yeah, so hopefully we can start that. But that had to all go in the bin, which was gutting. Right, so give me 2 seconds and I will finish pouring my beer, and then we'll come back for part 1, talking about the pre-show / preliminary matches.
You're listening to Life Junkies Podcast.
Right, so we start where we always start, with the pre-show. Just a quick point on this one. This podcast, the show itself was 4 hours long, or just under 4 hours. You had an hour pre-show on top of that, and this isn't even a main WWE show. That's nearly 5 hours worth of WWE television to get through. That's hard. It took me literally, from getting back from work on Monday evening, the whole night to get it watched. That included watching it while cooking dinner, watching it while eating dinner. It was after I got back in from work. It was watching it all night. That's hard for people to get through. 5 hours is a long time. And I know the main target audience is America, where they've got more time to watch it. It's on a Sunday night, so it's a bit easier, it's a bit more reasonable. But even then, and I'm not going to profess to know the time zones, how they work in America and everything like that. I know they vary between coasts. I think the West Coast is Pacific time, which is later, which is, yeah, so it's like 4 there, it's 9 on the East Coast. I'm losing the point, but 5 hours for what is the WWE B show. And I enjoyed this show. This is probably the best show since WrestleMania for me. But it's just too much. And I know we keep saying this, 3 hours for Raw every week. It's too much. 5 hours for, and then okay, you don't have to watch the pre-show, but you've got 2 great wrestling matches on this pre-show. You've got a thrown together intercontinental match between 2 guys that can have a stunner, that have had stunners over in New Japan, and you've got the cruiserweight title match, which always delivers. So you've got to decide you don't. It's getting to the point that with WWE, and it seems churlish to complain about the idea that we have too much wrestling, there's too much content, but there really is. I've mentioned this before in the podcast before, but this really hit because it was just so hard to get through it all. They just need to tone down a bit. It got to the point where you're having to pick and choose what you're watching, and I don't watch any Raw or SmackDown anymore because I just haven't got the time to get through it. I struggle to get through, to be honest, pay-per-views and NXTs. I watch both NXT UK and NXT every Thursday, and I Monday nights generally I try and reserve to get through some classic wrestling content that I haven't watched before. And I'm planning to sort of start from the first arcade, go through all the pay-per-views, and as I hit Raw and Nitro and ECW and stuff, incorporate them. And it's going to say I'm going to be watching for ages, but I'm not going to sit down and watch 5 hours worth of that on a Monday night. I'm going to sit down and watch an hour or two. I'll watch half of Starcade tonight. I'll watch the other half of Stargate next week, and it'll be like that. It's far more manageable. It's just not manageable anymore. But yeah, that's my moan about that. And on to the matches. We started off with the Intercontinental title match with Shinsuke Nakamura versus Finn Balor. This seemingly came out of nowhere. I know I don't really watch Raw or SmackDown anymore. I tend to get blindsided with the pay-per-views now. This is where we've got to a point with. I still at least used to pay attention to what was going on. I've pretty much zoned out of anything that's going on. And I'll get a message from Chris, are you watching Extreme Rules this weekend? So there's a pay-per-view this weekend. And then I go back and sort of have a look at it. I go, okay, this card's right. I go, what was the pay-per-view? It wasn't bragging rights. It was Stomping Grounds. They had the last pay-per-view. It was just naff. And this leading on from it, this was definitely a step up. And I know they brought in Paul Heyman and they brought in Eric Bischoff. Paul Heyman, you can see straight away what's happening. I've been keeping up with Raw a bit more the last 2 weeks leading up to this, and we'll SmackDown a little bit more. I know Eric Bischoff and started on SmackDown. I don't really know what Eric Bischoff brings to SmackDown. It's not like he was some wrestling visionary. He was a bit of a one-trick pony for me. But hey, I will. If Chris is on next week, I will talk to Chris about it, and he might disagree with me. Sure. But we'll see what happens going forward. But you've got to remember Vince is still in charge of everything, and this show still had Vince's paw marks all over it. So anyway, back on Shinsuke Nakamura versus Finn Balor. Now, Shinsuke, we've been dissatisfied with on this podcast a lot. He hasn't been the Shinsuke Nakamura that we hoped for, and we've said various reasons, whether it's WWE holding him back, whether it's age and injuries, or whether it's just he doesn't care. He's here for the payday. He'll take the fat WWE paycheck before going back and retiring and having an easier life. So they've done a bit of a rebirth of him in recent times. They've moved him away from the what was that gimmick, the low blow artist, I don't know, back to as he was when he first came back in. And you've got to remember, this is a pre-show match, so this is designed to warm the crowd up, but you can't be doing too much. You're not going to get a 5-star match in the pre-show, even if you've got 2 guys capable of that. They could have gone out there and pulled off a 5-star match, but you're not allowed to. For a pre-show match, I thought this was really good. Finn Balor is far better than the pre-show, and I was hoping as soon as this match finished that this would be the springboard for Finn Balor to sort of then move back up. Okay, so he's had the Intercontinental title for a little bit. Now he's going to go and move back up to world title, but it looks more like he's going to take a bit of time off. I don't know how they're working that. I know he got attacked by the returning Bray Wyatt on Raw. And he's tweeted he's meant to be taking a few weeks off. I don't know how it's working, if he's going to work SummerSlam and then take some time off, or he's going to take some time off between now and SummerSlam and then come back as a returning face, which will be odd because you'll be getting what could possibly be Bray Wyatt's first singles return match, technically against a returning face. It's really a match where you'd want both of them to win, but of course you can't. You have to choose who you want to go for, and from the strength of Bray Wyatt's promos leading up to this, I think you're going to have to go for Bray Wyatt, really. But I'm not here to talk about SummerSlam, am I? I'm here to talk about Extreme Rules. I said this is about as good as you could get. Hopefully this US title run will actually be useful to Shinsuke. His last one was a complete waste. That's what there is to say about that. Moving on to the Cruiserweight title, it was Tony Nese taking on the champion Drew Gulak. Gulak has been consistently one of the most entertaining wrestlers on any show he's been on, and that includes NXT, which has the most entertaining wrestlers in WWE. He's cycled through various gimmicks. I'm not too sure why he cycled through them so quickly, but he has. But he's been gold on the mic. He's brilliant in the ring. He's more than earned this title run. Tony Nese is so boring. He's as boring as Gulak is entertaining. His weird title run between Gulak and Alexander was a complete waste and very random. It was completely needless. You could have a really good Gulak-Alexander feud and had that stretch a few months and have them be the two main guys on 205 Live. Again, I don't watch 205 Live. I don't know what's going on with Alexander. He's sort of he's bouncing around on SmackDown a bit now, isn't he? But guys like Tony Nese, they're your... And again, people might be listening to this completely disagree with me, but to me, someone like Tony Nese is your archetypal boring cruiserweight. He's the guy. He will never elevate himself. Both Gulak and Cedric could. I don't think they'll ever be world titles, like winning a heavy world title, but they could have decent runs on the main card. Those guys should be the guys promoting your cruiserweight division, not Tony Nese. He shouldn't be anywhere near it. You give Alexander and Gulak two guys with charisma, two guys that can go in the ring and pull off great matches. You have them both go. That's it. All Tony Nese is, he's not even that interesting in the ring, because this was, for me, one of the flattest cruiserweight title matches I've seen. So he's not even that good in the ring. He's got no charisma as far as I can see. So all he is a body. Well, everyone in WWE is a body. So what else have you got? And it's not like he's coming out with Chris Masters level of rip. He's not. He's about as ripped as the other guys on 205 Live. So he's not really. I don't know. Gulak won this one, of course, keeping his title and moving on. But they do this. That's what 205 Live do. They have the champion and they just sort of feed them challengers that aren't going to win. You know they're not going to win going into it. I wasn't Buddy Murphy. Buddy Murphy had it for a bit, didn't he? Did Buddy Murphy transfer to Drew Gulak? I've completely zoned out of my wrestling recently. What happened to Buddy Murphy? Where's Buddy Murphy gone? Anyway, I've completely lost my track of thought. Cool. So that was the pre-show, and then we move on to the main card proper with Shane McMahon and Drew McIntyre versus Roman Reigns and The Undertaker. So I'm sort of practicing. As soon as The Undertaker came out, I could hear Chris gushing all over The Undertaker, all the way from Northern Ireland. He comes on the back of this of the horrendous Brothers of Destruction versus the X match, and then the Undertaker Goldberg match. Now, the Undertaker Goldberg match. Now, I refuse to watch Crown Jewel. It was Crown Jewel this time, wasn't it? Whichever this one's being called, yeah, it was. Or whatever the last one was called. I won't watch any of the Saudi Arabia shows because I don't agree with them going over. I don't agree putting money into a regime that has those human rights abuses in it. So no, I won't give them my viewing figures for that. Not that it means anything really in the grand scheme of things, but hey, I get to virtue signal for a bit and feel a little bit better about myself. But what I did see was clips on Twitter and stuff like that, specifically the end of the Undertaker Goldberg match, and people have been on at both of them and the end of it was horrendous. Yes, these are two old guys, but the match before that it was going alright. And it's quite obvious. You see Goldberg go straight head first into that pole, and he's concussed. He's out. Now, you get this in sports, and this is something particularly in football, English football. We're talking here. They're starting to take concussions a lot more seriously now. And what you get every single time is that, and they still there's rules against if a doctor comes on and says they have a concussion, they have to come off. That's the rules. But you still see players left on, and the excuse is, well, they wanted to carry on. Well, The athlete will always want to carry on, no matter what, because that's what makes you an athlete. And you can say that wrestling isn't real, rah, 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 but these guys are still athletes. These guys are still testosterone going around in there. They're still competitive. They're not. You don't understand what a concussion feels like. You're in the middle of a fight. You're knackered. It's not your judgment to make whether you carry on or not. Whether you're a English football player, whether you're an NFL player, whether you're a wrestler. That is not your decision to make, because you will always want to go on. And not only do you probably not understand what a concussion feels like, what a concussion does to you, you've got that competitive. It means you don't want to let people down, whether that is your teammates in playing the match or whether that is the crowd that have come to watch you wrestle. Also, you don't fully understand what a concussion is going to do to you, and you're not thinking clearly. That's the point of a concussion. You're not thinking clearly. It was Brock, after his concussion in WrestleMania all those years ago against Kurt Angle, had no idea what happened from before the start of that match to ages after. He was in the back having to be restrained because he was being aggressive, because he wasn't all there. So people shitting on them for the end of that match. Yes, it was bad. Yes, it was scary, really scary in parts. Someone could have got seriously hurt. That's not on The Undertaker. That's not on Goldberg. That's on WWE, the WWE officials and the WWE doctors. There should have been someone there to assess them straight away to make sure that he was alright. And the ridiculous thing is, they normally have people there for cuts. Straight away they get a doctor down because we're not allowed blood anymore. But then, I don't know whether it was because it was over Saudi Arabia or what, if they didn't take they must have taken it quite personal, I have no idea. But no one goes out. And one of those guys could have killed themselves. You could have had a broken neck, and that's it. But that's my rant on that. That's something that I've been building up for a little while. But anyway, that's my defense of the Undertaker and Goldberg. Talking more about the guys in this match, I'm not sure how I feel about this best in the world stuff. It's now been going on for ages since it wasn't called World Cup, was it? The second Saudi show that I refused to watch. I'm not up to date with what's going on Raw and SmackDown, but Shane McMahon was in quite an interesting feud with The Miz. I presumed that was going to end with The Miz getting one up on Shane McMahon, but he now seems to have disappeared. Shane McMahon's sort of punked him out and moved on to not just bigger and better things, but several other feuds. He seems to be feuding with Roman Reigns and Undertaker appears, but over on SmackDown he's still feuding with Kevin Owens, and he's got multiple lackeys defending him on multiple fronts, and The Miz is still floating around somewhere, I presume. I know he's out on Raw. It's too all over the place, and what they try to do is, we're not going to give you an authority figure. You're not going to have McMahons everywhere, and they get to the word fairly on that. We haven't seen Stephanie McMahon for ages, which is a blessing. Triple H hasn't really been out, but all they've done is just pour Shane McMahon all over everything. And Shane McMahon he was nice. He was a breath of fresh air when he first came back, but really he's just playing the exact same character as the Authority were. And this is the problem. It's not that Triple H is bad as a character. He's not. He's one of the greatest of all time. He's very good. Stephanie McMahon as a heel can be very good, but it's the character they were playing, and it was this idea that no one ever. And okay, yes, people are starting to get one-ups on Shane, but it's not really, not properly, and it's the booking is the issue here. Possibly, I know that sort of this Extreme Rules counts as sort of a reset for Eric Bischoff and Paul Heyman coming in, but you still got Shane is still in a active feud. Whether he finishes with Roman Reigns and The Undertaker, he's still got Kevin Owens is still not decided. It's not done. So yeah, it's again bad booking, and Shane McMahon's a 40-something-year-old non-wrestler who's getting one over on The Miz, who they should be pushing to the main event. He should be challenging for world titles. Now he's doing what? That guy made the Intercontinental title relevant. He had 2 brilliant reigns of it. He was over. They got him over as a face, which is what they've wanted to do for ages, and now he's gone. Not on the last 2 pay-per-views. Doesn't make sense. But really, what you've got in this, you've got one guy who can't really fight, one guy who can't fight anymore, and 2 guys who are big bruise-type wrestlers. So it was a decent brawling match. It was playing to the strengths of the guys and masking their weaknesses, and this is what you've got in there is Shane McMahon's always good for a spot, and we got the as I call it, the classic WWE SmackDown versus Raw table spot where you put the guy on the announce table, you climb up the turnbuckle and do the elbow drop off on him, and then we got the coast to coast, both on the Undertaker. The Undertaker, his in-ring psychology is always on point, and he was there for his cues and everything. And then Roman Reigns and Drew McIntyre did the workload. They carried the rest of it on their backs, so it worked. This is what happens when you don't put 4 aging guys out there and hang them out thinking that they can still work it, because they can't. Shane did botch the tombstone nearly, but he got it with a second attempt. But botching was not getting him up and putting him back down and doing it again. There was no one was really nearly dropped on their head. It wasn't dangerous. It was fine. And that was Shane botching that. He didn't jump from the first time. I don't know whether he expected Undertaker to be able to pick him up. He's not. The dude's 50 years old. He's not in the shape he used to be. Help him out, Shane. That's the point. That's what wrestling is. I enjoyed it. It was a bit predictable, a bit sort of by the numbers, but it worked. And the fans in attendance seem to really like it. So there you go. That got a thumbs up from me. Moving on, we had the Raw Tag Team titles. The Usos versus Revival. Now, these guys are two of the best tag teams in the world right now. Usos have been having the best tag team matches in years with the New Day over the last few years. Now, the Revival, who... when I say WWE, I mean main WWE. I don't count NXT in this, because they're the Revival, one of the best tag teams to come through NXT, are finally being allowed to show what they could do. Even with their last title run, they weren't really allowed to show what they do. They had the weird matches with where they were losing every week on Raw and SmackDown and Raw, and then they had when they lost it to the B team for no apparent reason of an attempt at a feel good moment, which didn't really hit home with anyone. Now they've got it, and now they're again some more of Shane's lackeys, but if that's what it takes, and they're channeling their inner Ric Flair, still keeping to the old school wrestling roots, and I really like it. I really enjoyed this match. It's really good, and I would love to see these guys go again, or against the massive reserve of tag teams that they have main card. Yeah. Moving on, it was Cesaro and Aleister Black. Now the promos for Aleister, I know Aleister Black can cut a great promo. You wouldn't believe that he's Dutch. Listening to him, you'd believe that he is a native English speaker. He's so good at speaking English. He speaks English better than I do. But the weird promos have been odd, and then the knocking, but no one was at the door, but this match, I would quite pleased sit down and go, this match more made up for it. This was a great match. I needed more of it, really. I hope that this isn't Aleister Black now moves on and leaves Cesaro, and I know people have been complaining because this is Aleister Black's return match. This is his first proper singles match on the main roster, but this isn't Oscar versus Emma, where Emma was a no one in the women's roster and Oscar was the next great thing, and by having a back and forth match, they're actually damaging Oscar and not really helping Emma that much, because she's not going anywhere. Well, she was going anywhere, but where she was going was out of the company. These are two guys that are the future of WWE. Both of them are brilliant. Cesaro struggled to get over on his own last time. If he keeps pulling out matches like this, he's now got a bit more charisma after being with Sheamus in the tag team. He looks more confident now. He's not yodeling anymore, which is a blessing for everyone. I really enjoyed it. Give me more. Give me a long-term feud with these guys. Give me 50-50 booking. I don't care. Let Cesaro beat him on SmackDown or something, or at the next pay-per-view. Let's up the ante and keep going, and then give these guys half an hour to go, or even longer, to go and do what they want to do. Give them a 2 out of 3 force match. Hell, give them a best out of 7 tournament, or at least a best out of 5. Give them something where something is going on. Oh yeah, and then just hook it to my veins and let me watch it. It's brilliant. Because I'm a big fan of both of these. Still, the creaking and the board with Aleister Black has to go. It's hokey and old school wrestling, and Jim Cornette loves it. And while I agree with a lot of what Jim Cornette says, that I don't agree with. That's old school wrestling, and it's not. It weakens his character. But Jim Cornette thinks Aleister Black is the Undertaker Mark II, and he's not. He's not supernatural. He's not creepy. He's just a guy with a lot of tattoos who's a bit dark, who's a bit metal. He's not that. Anyway, Alistair Black wins that as he had to. So yeah, give me that. Give me more. And the last section of this part is the SmackDown Women's Tag match. That's Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross versus Bayley. From the promo before this match, what in God's name have they done to Nikki Cross? She was one of the most interesting characters in NXT. She was more than that. She made the Sanity stable, and then they brought Sanity up without her, and then she found a way to be whole again and to carry on doing that on her own, which where someone like Carmella, okay, now Carmella didn't make what are they called? Enzo Amore and Cullen and Cass. They had a name, didn't they have a name? Yeah. So she wasn't, she didn't make them. She was the girl that danced down the ring with them and stood on the side. But as soon as they left without, which again was a mistake as well, she struggled. And okay, she sort of found a footing as part of a comedy duo, but her run in NXT and on the main roster was a bust. And they really tried hard with her, far harder than they tried on Nikki Cross. Nikki Cross has been given, mental as a character trait, and she's ran with it, and she's done brilliantly. And her stuff with the Alistair Black injury when he was world champion and then had to relinquish it. He didn't have to relinquish it, he was cost it, and then he couldn't get his rematch. That stuff with Nikki knows, that was brilliant. And they brought it to the main roster and didn't do anything with her, no apparent reason, because Vince can't book any of these women properly. And now they made her into an Alexa Bliss fan. You can sort of still see the rough remains of what was Nikki Cross, but they've destroyed it. And what I really hope is when the eventual turn comes, Nikki Cross goes back to proper crazy Nikki Cross. Rocking in the ring, giggling to herself, and was terrorising people. That's what she should be, not this characterless fan. Also, in that, Street Profits have really turned things up since their tag team title win. I wasn't a fan of them from before, but they've stepped up. They stepped up in NXT, and they stepped up here in this promo. They're a lot more intense than they used to be. I found them quite irritating. So the champions, are they at the level of War Raiders? No, but I also didn't like the War Raiders until they won the tag team titles. And then they're nowhere near someone like DIY or The Revival. But those are two of the best tag teams. The Revival are one of the best tag teams. DIY were one of the best tag teams, and I'm pretty confident they will be when both men are fit and ready to move up. Also, I still haven't got to talking about the actual match yet. Grave Dragon and Sasha Banks. Do you remember when Bayley had a friend and she just ditched her for no reason? She's still gone about Sasha Banks. She's on her way out of a company. We haven't seen her since WrestleMania. We haven't seen her in months. The last time we saw Sasha Banks, I was doing a regular weekly podcast. He's still going on. It's the rivalry that we all deserve, but we never got, and I love it. And I hope he never stops. I hope that's just his thing. Just once a week he throws some insult Sasha Banks away without ever actually naming her, because she'll be on AEW. But no, the match itself was really good. Really nice, simple booking. It looks like they finally worked out how to book Bayley after they made her this really weak-looking, sobbing, "Oh, I'm so happy to be here" girl with the awful "This Is Your Life" segment and whatever else that. They've actually found out how to book her. And hey, guys, it turns out it's really simple. It's pretty much the same as what they did on NXT. Book her like you booked John Cena. The main difference here being she's an actual underdog. It is that simple. This is what got me and got everyone else when they ruined Bayley, and they completely messed up her first title. She shouldn't have won it when she won it, which was at No Way Out or whatever it's called now, before basically the pay-per-view before WrestleMania. She should have won it at WrestleMania, so you got the WrestleMania moment, but also you make her an actual person, not this sort of, again, weak, sobbering mess that's just so happy to be here. Which is actually what they did with Sasha Banks. They gave both of them the same character when they came up, and it didn't work for either of them, because that wasn't where their strengths lie, and that wasn't what made them great in NXT. Sasha Banks was the boss, and we never properly got the boss. We never saw her at her best in the main roster, and that's a shame. And now she's gone off, and she'll be the boss in AEW, and she'll be brilliant doing it. Bayley now is now wrestling as the underdog who genuinely overcomes these things, and people won't turn her like they turn on John Cena. They won't turn her like they turn on Roman Reigns, because neither of those men are underdogs. They're both big, good-looking blokes. Bailey looks like an underdog. She's small compared to the rest of the wrestlers on there. She's not got the looks of Alexa Bliss. She's not unattractive, but she's that sort of supermodel level of good looks. She hasn't got the fake boobs and everything. She looks like a regular girl. She looks like an underdog on that roster, especially against someone like Alexa Bliss or against Charlotte Flair, who's twice her size. So it works for her. What a surprise. It strikes me as, and this is just something that goes on to bed, WWE's booking of underdogs tends to be like Hollywood's booking of nerdy female lead roles. They think you can just slap some glasses and a bad hairstyle on someone and that makes them an underdog or a nerdy female lead. It doesn't. If you want an underdog, you need to actually cast an underdog in that role. You can't put someone that isn't an underdog and tell us they are, because people will see straight through it. Bailey winning makes perfect sense. She did win. For anyone that may be listening to this but hasn't watched the pay-per-view, then I don't know why you're listening to it. Hopefully now we'll see Alexa turn on Nikki. Those two can have a feud, and Nikki be at a crazy best, and she can get the win over her in the long term. And Bailey moving on to the next challenge. She's moving on to someone, Charlotte Flair, possibly? No, Ember Moon, who is another one that is long overdue a good push, but has been watered down a bit. She never had a really strong character in NXT. She was sort of wolfy girl. She had sort of a werewolfy type character, but when she won the title, she was fairly generic face women's champion, but she was great in the ring, and if she can find a little bit more to her, she could be brilliant on the main roster. I keep pushing for her. I want her to win everything since she's gone up, because she's great. So take a quick pause, quench my thirst, and now we're back talking about the main matches.
Welcome to the Life Junkies Podcast.
And we are back. I probably shouldn't start things with "and we are back," but I'm going to keep this in. I could easily start this recording this a little bit again, but I'm not. I'm going to ramble on and make you listen to me ramble on, because that's what I do. That's my style. It's my podcasting style, guys. So the first match back was Bobby Lashley and Braun Strowman. For me, this was match of the night. I really enjoyed it. The build-up sort of has made sense. I like the whole thing of him putting him through the stage on Raw. It looked aggressive, it looked good, and then Bobby got up and Braun had to be stretched out, and I don't think we've seen Braun since then. And Bobby's been able to come out and go, I'm the best, rah. And now what we've got is a match that is organically built to be a last man standing match. Just so happens to be on an Extreme Rules pay-per-view. That's how it feels. And I've ranted about this many times about my issues of gimmick pay-per-views and how it makes things, we're just chucking. Look, he's now come out of a ladder to attack him because they just so happen to be having a ladder match at the ladder pay-per-view. But the build-up for this made sense. It looked good. And again, it was another match that played to the strengths of both of men. Lashley and Strowman, they're not great technical in-ring wrestlers. So let them just bash each other around. Let them hit each other through barricades, throw each other over announce tables, fight up the stairs. I like stuff like having the plants in the crowd who you're sort of throwing at each other, so it looks like you're fighting with fans, but of course you're not. Those are OVW guys or performance center guys now, I guess. Don't think OVW is still a thing. It was really good. The one little detail that I really liked was as they brawled up through the crowd right fairly early on in the match, and then went out into the concessions area. And instead of normally what you get is, we just so happened to have a camera in that bit of a concessions area. We didn't, and what they did is they gave us a few seconds of the commentators going, well, I don't know, we're trying to get a camera there. We're trying to, while you're sort of looking at where they've just gone, and then you come to a camera that is some guy sprinting across to film it. And Chris will probably come on and tell you about how heavy the camera is, and that's not realistic. And this is Chris who went sprinting out of Barnsley's stadium to film Joey Barton, who just got into a fight in a tunnel, allegedly. I don't know what came of all of that, but he ran out and got decent pictures of Joey Barton trying to escape for being stopped. He's trying to get out of there in the chairman's car. I don't know who was managing it at the time, and being stopped by police. So he's literally done what WWE have just done with this with the cameraman filming around. And yeah, but it's small details like that add to the realism. And I bet you that was a Paul Heyman thing. I bet you he was the one to sit down and point that out, because Vince wouldn't have thought of that, because that's not. Vince doesn't think of this is the issue with Vince's booking at the moment, is he doesn't think of those small issues, just those little bits that make it seem real and stuff like that. It pulls you out of the action. But anyway, it's been ages since we've had a really good backstage brawl, and that was what these guys gave us. And they brawled through the crowd, they brawled in, and that was really nice. I liked watching that with them fighting and Strowman threw Bobby against the board, and that looks fairly painful, even though I'm sure that cardboardy looking bottom bit was properly softened. I presume that they knew that they were going to do that before they did it, but I liked it because you had the fans that streamed out onto the concourse and they were watching and cheering on from the sides. That was really nice. And then they went back in, they brawled through a crowd, went back into the ring for a little bit, had the fight there, had the moment where Bobby tipped the chair over him, they went through the barricade, they had Bobby missed, obviously he was meant to jump off a barricade, Strowman catch him and then throw him over. Of course, he missed it, but you can't really blame him. Those barricades must get quite sticky, and it's impressive that a small guy who does that all the time can hit it. So Bobby, he's a very athletic man, he's not the most mobile looking dude. He got over the barricade without hurting himself, so I guess that in itself is impressive. And then Strowman again throwing him onto Funaki, who he's not even a wrestler anymore, he's just a commentator, and he's still being abused. And then of course the brawl at the crowd and that end moment, and as soon as you saw them looking towards you, knew exactly what was going to happen. And you had the segment which was still obviously a cushion landing area, but was staged really well. Again, the lighting wasn't on it straight away. They had to sort of move it, and like everyone was like, "Oh my god!" You couldn't properly see what had happened down there. Like, it's a big black box just randomly placed there. Again, of course it is, but it looked more effective. And yeah, they had the little brawl there and the power slam, and you had them looking. And if you haven't seen it, go search out. There's a fan that was literally right next to that, filmed that on his phone. And I'm normally against filming stuff like this. You get a little clip of whatever, and then cool, put your phone away, watch it, record it with your eyes, dudes. But when you're like that, when you're up there and the fighting comes up to you, of course you're going to record it, and he's recorded it. It looks brilliant, and you can see his filming is far better than you got from the WWE camera guys. I know it's hard, and they're moving up, and he's just stood there, he's already in place, but you see the look on both men's eyes, and you see him, he goes to pick up the power slam, and Bobby doesn't quite jump enough for him, and he goes back down, and they punch, back up. You see Braun looking, and you see him wide-eyed and looking crazy, and then slam straight down. You can tell this is my favourite match because it's the one I'll be talking about the most. And then you get that, and the referee's counting, and then you can't see any of men. And you've seen, and this is the one mistake they made. They showed, you could see Braun moving away from Bobby. It'd be better if you hadn't seen that, and all you'd seen is just both men disappear. Maybe even not have them sort the lighting out at all, and just have it completely like, as dark as you can, as you can't really make out what's going on. And it hits 7, and Braun Strowman bursts out of that makeshift plywood wall or whatever it was to win. That was a great ending. Really well, and it's a great image, and that's the kind of image you'll see on packages for the rest of Strowman's career. That's how good that image was. So it's not that far from what they've been doing, but they step it up, and you refine it, and you do it properly, and it makes it great rather than meh. And it's all about those little details. And yeah, that's what happens when you've got a guy helping as head writer who isn't a yes man. They actually do things properly. After that was Raw Tag Team titles. Now, I felt fairly down on this, and my notes are fairly down. Everyone else loved it, so obviously I'm wrong, and everyone else is right. And maybe it's just because I was on a come down from loving the Braun Strowman and Bobby Lashley match, which I don't think anyone else, people have enjoyed it. I don't think anyone else is quite as high on it as I was. Forgive me, I love a spot fest. Forgive me for it. But I'm never a fan of a triple tag team format anyway. I don't think it ever helps the match. It doesn't help you tell a coherent story. Nah. The New Day won, and the new SmackDown Tag Team Champions. I've got Raw Tag Team Champions written down here, but that's for Revival. So we have a SmackDown, yet they're blue, and then next year a New Day or a SmackDown team. Heavy Machinery are another a tag team that I felt came up too early. I felt they had a lot more to learn on NXT. I've said this on the paper. I said this to Chris on podcasts gone. I think maybe, possibly, yes. They came up before WrestleMania, didn't they? Yes, they did. So, but the one thing these two guys are great entertainers. Maybe if they're not the best wrestlers technically in the spot where Tucker, that's not Tucker Knight. Tucker Knight's the tall, skinnier one. Otis Dozovic, where he goes and he winds himself up to do the dive through throw. You're thinking he's not actually gonna, and he stops, and then gets out the ring and just belly flops on them. That's entertaining, and that's that side of wrestling that I do love, where it's not just wrestling doesn't just have to be a simulator fight, and you can have the Lashley Strowman matches which are serious and aggressive, but there's also more than enough room for this sort of more comedy, more entertaining aspect of it, and they do that brilliantly. New Day, again, for me, still one of the best tag teams in the world. I would rather watch a New Day match than watch a Young Bucks match. Shoot me for it. But they appeal to me. The wrestlers that I love and I've always backed. I got very passionate, and you'll hear this when I finally released a WrestleMania review podcast. I am a massive Kofi Kingston fan. I think he's brilliant, and okay, he wasn't wrestling in the match. He's currently world champion, well deserved. But Xavier Woods, he's great. He was great as Consequence Squeed in TNA. Never quite got the plaudits he deserved until he formed the New Day, and he is the mastermind behind the New Day. He was the one that was getting these guys together in the vignettes. He is the one backstage that orchestrated it. It was his idea, and Big E it's given Big E a showcase to show just how good he is. And this is the issue I have with, and this is what I was thinking this week after this pay-per-view, is that a lot of people talking about when Kofi loses it, getting New Day to turn on him. And for me, WrestleMania would have been the perfect moment, and I did. There was a horrifying period of time where I thought the New Day were going to turn on him. I really did, and cost Kofi it. I was dreading it. I didn't want to see it. It's one of those. It's where you're too emotionally invested. I don't want to see it. But I don't think you could get away with Big E being a heel. I don't think you can, because he's too entertaining. He's too nice. And we've seen lots of guys that are very entertaining, very nice, but Big E just comes off in such a genuine way. I could totally see Xavier Woods being that snivelling heel, the cowardly heel, the heel that WWE loves to push, but I can't see Big E doing it, because you'd have to strip away everything that makes Big E great, and Chris Jericho can get away with doing that. I don't think Big E can. So I think Big E, if they do ever split up the New Day, I don't think they ever do need to split up the New Day. I'll just put this out there. I don't think they ever need to. If they do, we know Vince loves to split up a tag team. It needs to be Woods that turns, and then Kofi and Big E sort of drift, similar to how they did with the Shield, and then they keep a they'll still tag his in matches. Oh, it's Big E and Kofi against whoever they're feuding with now. But yeah, Big E has to stay face for me. The good thing about New Day winning this is that Daniel Bryan can now go back to the main event. He had a chilling promo afterwards, which I think was on WWE.com. It's him going, I tried to be up, but I failed. I failed to elevate the tag team division. And he goes, but it wasn't me that failed, because you guys are unelevatable, and I've got something great coming up. And he's been brilliant. Him in a tag team with Rowan has been great, but he is main event, and Rowan is not on his level, nowhere near. So having them as a tag team, which puts them as equals, is only going to harm Daniel Bryan's mystique. So while this Rowan was nice, it's good that we've ended it now before we've damaged Bryan as a character, and he can now go back to being a crazy. I don't know if it means anything. I haven't kept up with Raw this week, but Rowan wasn't with Bryan when he was pulling off his pay-per-view. This talk, and I think Rowan does add something to it as the muscle, as the lackey behind him, especially with a guy the size of Bryan as a heel, because otherwise he then ends up having to be too cowardly, and it damages it, because then he's not standing for it, especially in this where he's standing for something. He's standing to save the planet. That's what he believes. he's standing for a cause. So then he can't be massively cowardly because that's him not standing up for his cause enough, and that means he doesn't believe it, and that undermines everything about the character. So you need someone like Rowan that can be his muscle. It means he doesn't have to be cowardly and run away from fights, but he can still be a bad guy. It's especially harder to pull that off when he's being a heel for promoting something that's actually very important. He's promoting helping save the planet. It's not a myth. It's not, and you could sort of play off Punk's straight edgeness as being preachy, and because you don't need to be straight edge. I say this while I'm drinking a beer, sort of drinking a beer intermittently while doing this podcast. You don't need to be straight edge. It's not, you're not going to die in 12 years time because you're not straight edge, but the planet, well, yeah. But anyway, without getting onto that, so what you stand up for is actually very important. So then you're trying to play him off as a heel, and the gimmick totally would not work as a face. You wouldn't be able to generate the right amount of cheers when he's coming out warning us about something. That's not how human beings are programmed. We can't cheer that, which is why people are so easy for people to get behind the anti-climate change BS and the stuff about the scaremongering about inoculations and all that jazz. So yeah, it's what I'm saying is he needs Rowan. He does need Rowan as a main eventer, even if Rowan isn't quite on his level. We quickly have Heyman coming out in Philadelphia at Extreme Rules, which is as close as you get to his ECW legacy, I guess. This is it. This is the pay-per-view that was once One Night Stands, ECW One Night Stand, which was the last time we saw ECW in its natural form. Comes out, gets cheers. This was sort of like a promo 101 of him trying to get getting Brock Lesnar cheers. And like WWE know what they did with his last title. People are tired of it and they're fed up of it. And of course now we know what happens later on in the night. This is him trying to get a cheer, and it's classic Heyman. He's brilliant in it. Of course, he's playing up as well. He could only do in Philly, and with that, either I'm a liar or I'm Paul Heyman. It's great. After that, we had the US title match. I'm going to sort of breeze this a bit quicker. I am loving the club being back together in all the heel glory. It seems odd that AJ Styles is using the club to back him up to win the US title. You'd think if he's important enough to have lackeys that he'd be going for the world title. I always seem odd in this situation. I think Bray Wyatt went for US title where he had lackeys, and I know we're sort of removing Styles away, and he's sort of in that process of being recycled back through to go back to the main event. But it always strikes me as odd. But I'm not going to complain about the club being back together because they could do great things. Maybe once Finn Balor's been through the Bray Wyatt mauling, then he might be able to come back as well. As the club is basically the Balor Club, or better put in non-WWE terms, the Bullet Club. The original Balor is the original leader of the Bullet Club, who are of course now AEW. So this is the perfect time to get the club back together and maybe use them to in a sort of a DXE. I know they're not that sort of group, but maybe they could DX NWA style. Well, this is our version, and we've got the guys we've got the original guys, the proper guys. I don't know, Tama Tonga is still, and okay, yeah. So the Bullet Club is it's almost like that NWO fatigue, where NWO got so big that it split into multiple factions, but that was all in one company. This is split across 3 companies. When you think about it, you think, well, Tama Tonga is now the leader of the New Japan Bullet Club, or New Japan / Ring of Honor Bullet Club, the original faction. And he is one of the original members, Tama Tonga and another Samoan wrestler, I can't remember his name. And then the original Bullet Club leader, who is Finn Balor, and the Good Brothers, Carl Anson and Festus. Let's call him Festus. Go for an old name, Luke Gallows. They were the original members who are now in WWE, with AJ Styles, who is the second leader. And then you've got the Elite in All Elite Wrestling, who had Cody Rhodes and Kenny Omega, who have been the next 2 leaders. So that's I don't know where I'm going with this. I had to get up at 3:30 this morning. It is now 10 o'clock at night. Cut me some slack. Ricochet losing his US title after a very short reign here. It's a shame. I would have liked to see him have a longer reign, and this is where you weigh two things up. You go, well, we do want to give Ricochet a longer reign. He deserves that longer reign. He's good enough to have that longer reign, but we're stopping that reign and we're not giving him the longer reign because, and this is for the greater good here, because we're bringing the club back and they need that big win to start off with and to make them a thing. Because if they come back and Styles just beats some randomer, and who else have they got on the card really for him to beat? It's a big name rather than just taking a title. You can't put him straight up to the World Heavyweight title picture, so he needs a secondary title to win and to be, boom, I'm here. So that's the one. Unfortunately, Ricochet has to be sacrificed, but he'll get a chance again. He's young, he's good. He needs to stop allowing dodgy videos of himself to be released, but cool. He'll be back. It's good. Next, we had Dolph Ziggler versus Kevin Owens. I completely missed this match. I remember watching the Kevin Owens promo beforehand where he said, "Oh, Shane probably would have fired me, but he had his match earlier, so I'm still here, so I'm going to come out." And I knew this match was meant to happen. Completely zoned out of the match, but it was 17 seconds, so you can't really blame him too much. R.I.P. Dolph Ziggler. I think we can say that now. But he's getting punked out in that way. Daniel Bryan's the only man to come back from being punked out like that. Who else have we seen punked out? Chavo Guerrero, Santino Marella. Yeah, that is the company that Dolph Ziggler, former world champion, is now keeping. So yay for him. But he's not a full-time wrestler anymore, is he? He's got the time off that he wants to take. He's doing stuff with Fox News, being an analyst for them. So he's got more than just wrestling to keep him occupied, and he's got a decent enough legacy to be going forward with. Next we have Samoa Joe and Kofi Kingston for the WWE title. I am going to admit, and I've talked earlier about how much I love Kofi Kingston, how much I felt his WWE title run was overdue, but his run so far has been poor, and he shouldn't take any blame for that. That's the booking, solely the booking. It hasn't been booked well. He hasn't been given the opponents that he needed, and Samoa Joe is just another one of that long list. Because this is what I'm saying. I said before, Joe loses his US title. Was it US title he had? Yeah, it was US title. That thing is still getting around, isn't it? So he loses his US title, then let him go and beat people up for a bit, for a few months of him just beating people up. Then he's now suddenly a legitimate main eventer. But no, because this is Vince McMahon booking WWE, and this is where his dirty paws come in, and I'm going to talk about his dirty paws in a minute when we talk about the main event. He wants to do it quickly. He doesn't want to build something properly, so he's just going to chuck Samoa Joe in the main event. I've lost my US title match. I'm going to go to the main event. And I think I moaned about this to Chris when we were talking about it. I said it's stupid, and it is. And therefore, Joe, who is, by anyone's metric, a legitimate world title challenger, doesn't look like it because he hasn't been booked like it. So the problem you've got is Joe isn't built up in WWE like someone like Randy Orton. Not every WWE fan, I reckon less than half of WWE fans, have been there and watched his entire back catalogue, that know where he's come from, what he's done, the stuff he's done in TNA, the stuff he's done in Ring of Honor, all of that side of it. They don't know it. They haven't seen the amazing matches he's put on, so they don't know. So therefore, he doesn't. And even someone like me who's watched it, and I haven't watched all of it, I zoned out of TNA when Christian came back over to WWE. He was the main reason for me watching TNA. So you have to do more with that. And someone like Randy Orton, who it looks like is going to be Kofi Kingston's next challenger, who will always feel like a legitimate main eventer because he's always been a WWE main eventer since he was 22 years old. It was 21 years old where he won his first WWE World Heavyweight title. Joe hasn't got that advantage behind him, so you have to properly build him up. And he's an easy guy to build up because he looks like he's hurting people in the ring. He looks violent. He looks tough, and he's damn athletic for a guy of his size. So go let him beat people up. Feed him jobbers for a month. Then let him start beating up guys like, by jobbers I mean legitimate nobodies, the random indie wrestler from wherever you are, Cesspit, New York or whatever. And then have him start to beat on the guys that are lower card but are established names. So help Dolph Ziggler, because Dolph Ziggler's down lower card. But on the B team, have him beat both members of the B team. Have him beat Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins. Have him beat that level of guy, and then slowly work his way up. until the only one that is left is the world champion, and Joe is legitimate badass. But they don't. They just hot shot him into main event, and it all comes across a bit lackluster. And I enjoyed the match. Yes, I did. We still haven't seen a classic Joe match to the level that we know he can do. But again, similar to Shinsuke Nakamura, he's an older guy now. There's going to be niggling injuries there. So, but Kofi Kingston wins and retains. I wouldn't have been surprised if Samoa Joe won this match, but of course Samoa Joe can't win it with what's about to happen, because you can't have both Kingston and Rollins lose their titles on the same night, because it's you're gonna have a crowd, especially with all the title changes we've seen. We've seen the Intercontinental title change hands, the Cruiserweight title change hands, the SmackDown Tag Team title change hands, the US title change hands, and then the Universal title at the end of the night. So yeah, it's two world title switches on a night. Can work, but it's got to be built properly, and it wouldn't have worked tonight, not with everything else. Fair. So the main event, and definitely the last match on the card, because there's nothing else planned, nothing else is going to happen. This is the Corbin and Evans versus Lynch and Rollins, the last chance Extreme Rules tag match, and a lot of matches on this card have been Extreme Rules. I haven't bothered to point them out because I don't care. Last chance Extreme Rules tornado tag match for the Royal Women's title and the Universal title. Can I just say, and I didn't mention it during the Bayley match, talking about that, I am really disappointed with the fact that they split the women's tag team belt. Not women's tag team belts. The women's tag team belts weren't even on this pay-per-view. The women's world title back up again. I thought at least give Becky a longer title reign. But as I've made clear several times, I want them to merge those belts. Merge the Universal and the World title and the WWE title. They look exactly the same. It's just one of them's red, which again is that sort of that lazy, I can't bother to design a whole new title. We'll just take the WWE title and make it red. And that could be the Raw one. They've done that with the women's titles. They've done it with the tag titles. Yeah. So I talked about Vince McMahon's grubby paws being on this. Lacey Evans is Vince McMahon's grubby paws. She, like Heavy Machinery, she needed more time in NXT. She was not ready to come up. But I was enjoying her in NXT. She should be right now fighting in the main event of NXT. But they hotshotted her because Vince McMahon saw attractive blondes, and we all know that is Vince McMahon's type. And he sees attractive blonde and he thinks, "Oh, I've got another Trish Stratus." Right, let's start that from the top. I mentioned Vince McMahon's grubby little paws being all over this main event, and Lacey Evans is the product of Vince McMahon's grubby little paws. Not in that way. We're not talking about his grapefruits. We are talking about him and his love for attractive blondes. Now, Lacey Evans, I said when she first came up, she should still be in NXT. It's not that I don't think that she will one day be good enough for main roster. I'm a fan of Lacey Evans, and it annoys me that I've had to accept this criticism of her, because the criticism of her in-ring work has been fair. She's been completely shown up, completely thrown to the wolves in that respect by Vince. Right now, she should be their challenger for the NXT Women's title. She's not. She's on a main roster, on a women's roster that doesn't need her, that is better than she is, and she's been shown up, and that is damaging. And you don't know now if she'll ever recover from that, because the fans have completely turned against her. Not in a, "Oh, you're a heel, we're going to boo you" way. In a, "You're in a spot where you shouldn't be, and you're not good enough in the ring" way. She still needs to be learning this, but and it's a shame, because I like her. I like her promos. I like her gimmick. She just needed that refinement, that time to get those skills down, and she wasn't allowed it, which is stupid. But Vince thought he could have another Trish Stratus. He'll never have another Trish Stratus. He'll never get that lucky again, where he brings someone in because he thinks they're attractive, and they have that time, they put that work in to mature. Because the fans won't give you that time anymore, because we're expecting more from our women straight off the bat. Women are no longer, "Oh, they're all eye candy. If they can wrestle, then that's a bonus." And that's how Trish Stratus got. When she first came in, she couldn't wrestle. But she, being the professional she was, she learned, but if she came in that exact same circumstances now as a model who couldn't wrestle, she wouldn't get the chance to improve, because we've already got Becky Lynch who can fight. We've already got Charlotte Flair that can fight, Ember Moon that can fight, Bayley that can fight. We've got a roster full of talented female wrestlers, so she would have been completely shunned and completely out of the picture straight away. She wouldn't have had that chance. I don't know. I don't feel like I'm conveying my point properly, but there is a point there. The roster has changed. What we're expecting from it has changed. Also, Baron Corbin is not main event, and I know it's come out since that apparently Vince sees Baron Corbin as being what women find attractive. Not any women that I know. And that's why he's being pushed. I don't get it. But he's not main event. I'm sure he's a very nice guy, and I'm sure he works very hard, and I'm sure he's very professional, and part of the reason why Vince also liked him is because he's WWE grown. He's not an indie guy. I apologise for my any gross hay fever noises you may be hearing. I really do apologise. It's a bad time of year for me. I've taken about as much hay fever medication as I can take, but you're going to hear some sniffing. It's unfortunate, but it's there. There's probably no one listening at this point anyway. Sentient ghouls. So anyway, it was fairly average until the end, and then I had a moment that I had to pause, rewind, watch, pause, rewind, watch again of Corbin taking Lynch out with the end of days, and he goes to Rollins and sort of like, "Oh, you do something about it, you little beep," and you see Rollins' face, and this is sort of a fairly bang average tag match. We then get this moment where he's just taken out, which is massive anyway. And I'm going to talk about this first. This is massive anyway because we all know that WWE have a rule of no men hitting women, and that is the rule: no men hitting women. It's not no intergender. It's not that. That's not the rule. The rule is men cannot do moves on women. Women have been allowed to hit men all the way through. And I've moaned about it on here. I've moaned about it on a video. I'm sure I've moaned about it on a blog as well, probably. And the main thing I would have moaned about was fairly recently. It was the last year, this time-ish last year, was the Bryan and Brie Bella versus Miz and Maurice feud, where Daniel Bryan and Brie Bella are the faces, they're the good guys, Miz and Maurice are the heels, but Brie Bella goes up and hits the Miz, knowing full well that he cannot hit her back. And it's played off as, yeah, you're standing up for yourself, but she's not. She's hitting someone that can't hit her back. And I know she's a woman, and she's a particularly small woman, and the Miz is a big, muscly man, and it's not a move. I don't think he was ever knocked down, but I think she hit him a couple of times. But I don't think it was just that sort of Stephanie McMahon, I'm emasculating you style, or look at me, I'm a woman. But what she's doing is hitting someone that can't hit her back, and that's a heel move, and it completely betrays her character and what you're trying to do with it. If I went up. And the point is not how much damage you are doing to the person by hitting them. The point is you are hitting someone that can't hit you back, and that in itself is wrong. If I walked up to Brock Lesnar and I hit him, knowing full well that he couldn't hit me back, I'm not doing any damage to Brock Lesnar. No, he's going to forgotten I've hitting him 5 minutes after I've done it. He's barely going to feel it. The bloke's huge, he could snap me in half with a twig. But if I'm going and doing that while knowing that he can't hit me back, that makes me an arsehole. No matter how much damage I've done to him, that makes me an arsehole. And that's the same when you've got Brie Bella hitting the Miz. That's the same if you have, and I think Lynch has slapped Corbin in the build up to this, I'm sure of it. So for him to then turn around and do that, and they'll reinstate that rule because they do these things with these rules. They do it when it suits them. No one's allowed to do a power driver, but The Undertaker and Kane are doing power drivers nearly every week when they were regulars. Also, can I point out, in general, when it's not a concussed Goldberg and Undertaker doing it, that Tombstone power driver is very, very safe. You have the time, and this is the thing, and I hike this back, and you say, oh, it's only for power drivers, which is very unsafe and rightly banned. Let's not even talk about the Canadian Destroyer, which is insane. But it's cycling back to, is it Mr. Kennedy, who at the Undertaker's behest tombstone the Undertaker, I think it was in a Hell in a Cell match in about 2006. and he got chewed out, and that is one of the many things that led to Mr. Kennedy's release, which is a shame. And I won't get over it because I was a big Mr. Kennedy fan. Even the other day, and this is 2006, I was 16ish, still living with my parents, and this is before everyone had Sky in their bedrooms. So when I watched wrestling, which both my parents hate, I watched it in the living room because that was the only place we had Sky. And so Saturday mornings, every Saturday morning, every week, my dad would be doing whatever he's doing in the mornings, normally housework, and I'd sit and I'd have my breakfast and I would watch SmackDown. And Mr. Kennedy, of course, at that point was a big fixture of it. And you go, Kennedy! And my dad picked that up. And my dad, the non-wrestling fan, was sat watching football just last weekend. And there was a Chelsea player called Kennedy, spelt differently, but it's Kennedy, Brazilian lad. And my dad looks up and goes, Kennedy! Because that is what the impression that Mr. Kennedy left. That's probably the most boring thing I've ever said, but sure, cool. What was my point? Yeah, it was the double standards and rules. So he did the tombstone power drive to Undertaker and got chewed out in the back by Vince, even though it was the Undertaker's idea, because even Mr. Kennedy, as brash as he could be, Ken Anderson, his real name, I believe, or that might have just been his TNA name. He wouldn't. No one would just go up and try to tombstone the Undertaker. It'd have to be his idea. Or at least he'd okayed it, but the story is that the Undertaker told him to do it. And he was like, "You sure?" He's like, "Yes, do a tombstone on me," which is a massive honour. And he got chewed out in the back, even though the tombstone power driver is the most safe version of a power driver, because you've got the time to position them. You're not dropping them between your legs. You're dropping to your knees. There's more distance there for the head, so they're not. You can easily make sure that the head is not hitting the ground before you. You can make sure that there's no damage to their neck happening. And he said, I think the thing was, the way Vince justified his double standards was all Undertaker and Kane have been doing the move for years. We know they can do it safely. And it's similar to, was it the Styles Clash? They made AJ Styles show him that he could perform it safely, even though the safety of that move has nothing to do with AJ Styles. And it's all about the guy taking the move. They made him do the move 3 times on someone. I think he did it because Vince McMahon had never seen the Styles Clash, even though Michelle McCool used it as her finisher. Michelle McCool, yeah, that classically, technically trained, very safe wrestler. So Chris Jericho had tricked him in, had snuck it into a few matches without anyone naming it. And then he went, "Oh, I see that move that AJ Styles has been doing the last few weeks." So yeah, it was good. Oh, that was the Styles Clash. And then he did it 3 times, and so that's how that's you've got to prove that you can do the dangerous move. This completely forgets the point of the probability of injury. Power drivers have been done so many times safely before you get Stone Cold Steve Austin breaking his neck. And it's not about doing it safely 5 times, because you could do that move safely for your entire career and then towards the end injure someone. But it's about having that probability. That probability is too high for someone to get injured. And there's going to be many people that want power drivers back, and you still get power drivers in indie shows and TNA, and I'm sure you'll see it in AEW. I'm sure they won't ban it. That's one of the things that I do agree with, is ban it, because it isn't, and you'll get. It's that probability where you've got 2 very knackered guys towards the end of a match, and it just takes that split second for you to not be switched on, and his head is too low, and that is your body weight and his body weight landing on his neck. And this is the issue I have with a lot of Japanese styles. It's all this neck-based attack. And it's yeah. But yeah, so we all know that the double standards are rules, and I'm sure that the men not being allowed to hit women clause will be back in, and it's supposed to be about stopping domestic violence. I don't think anyone's ever been inspired by WWE to go and beat their wife up. Hell, there's more kids have been inspired to go beat their mates up, but that's what kids do. Kids imitate, and something like wrestling, which is very imitatable. So the curb stomps back again, guys. So don't worry about that. We saw that in this match. He's been using Seth Rollins has been using that again for a long time. So that's alright. Kids are allowed to curb stomp each other, but you're not allowed to do a perfectly safe move on a woman, because for fear that that's not going to be imitated as such, but will inspire someone. Dave's going to go home and hit his wife. Dave's going to go home and hit his wife. Dave has other issues he's sorting out. He's not going to go home and hit his wife because he's seen Bubba Ray Dudley powerbomb Mae Young. Was it Mae Young he powerbombed? Through a table or whatever. It's not going to happen. It's the same red herring as Call of Duty and games like that, inspiring shootings or making kids more violent. It's not. It's a non-sequitur. It's not a thing. But how WWE are PG, and I'm sure that's part of the PG criteria. There's probably no intergender violence, and it looks good for the sponsors as well. So these days it's all about avoiding a controversy, unless apparently if you're in politics, which you can do whatever you want. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that. So that was it. So from that moment on, everything was perfect. Rollins' face, Corbin's reactions taken out like Lynch. Rollins' face, his then subsequent freak out of I'm gonna murder you, and this attacking him, and Corbin not getting another chance in. He's got the chair and he's going on him and he's hitting him. He gets the multiple curb stomps on him. While he's sitting with a chair, you see Lacey Evans backing away up the ramp. Now, you can either take that two ways, and I don't know how they played it off on Raw, if they played it off on Raw. That's either A, she is so shocked and so disgusted that he would attack Lynch, even though Lynch is her enemy, that she is getting out of there because she's not standing with this man anymore. Which you could do that because hitting a woman, and this is hitting a woman in real life, is a real horrible, heinous thing to do, especially if that woman is smaller. Because not sexist, but you know what I mean. It's a horrible thing to do. So that would be a perfectly legitimate reaction for her, and that would underline what he's done and the severity of it. Or it's Rollins is freaking out. I'm not going to be anywhere near that because Corbin's hit Lynch. I don't want to get hit by Rollins, and she's backing up and just being that general heel trope. But that again, little details you just saw in the back of the camera, backing up and getting out of there. That worked, and then of course he gets the pin 1, 2, 3, and that's it. They're done. And then out comes Brock Lesnar, cashes in his Money in the Bank. Boom, 1, 2, 3. New Universal Champion. Lynch continues to be the man. She's still got her Raw Women's title. Seth Rollins and his fairly lackluster title reign is over. And I'm not sad that Rollins' title reign is over. I'm glad it's not Corbin holding it. Am I disappointed it's Lesnar? Yes. And this is it. The cash-in was great. The whole moment was great. Do we really need more Brock as champion? I know it felt kind of inevitable. You've got Brock's got the Money in the Bank briefcase, and Heyman is now head Raw writer or whatever the title he's been given is. But we had more life in this teasing of the cash-in. This Brock party stuff was great, and with Brock being a big dude as well, he's a big, intimidating, scary dude. With him not just having that to him, but also having this contract which gives him a match whenever he wants. There was something there, and you could have ran with that for longer, but they didn't. So there you go. I don't know. Maybe he'll do more dates for Heyman as Booker. That's hoping. I don't think he will. So that's it. So now we await to see what goes on. Again, I don't know. I didn't pay attention really this week, guys. I'll be honest. I don't know what's gone on. I don't know if Lesnar's come out. I don't know if Heyman's come out or what. My thing with Lesnar is, even if you just said, okay, can we do every pay-per-view? Don't do anything else. Can we do every pay-per-view? You've got Heyman on hand there, who is more than capable enough to come out and carry things on his own. Every week he's there now, because he is head Raw writer. So have him come out, have him do the promo for Brock Lesnar. So have Brock Lesnar come out, at least then it's being defended at every pay-per-view, and it's not just disappearing for months. There was some stat about that is the first time the Universal title has been defended at Extreme Rules since its inception. Its inception was 3 years ago. At least 2 of those years, it was because Brock Lesnar was champ and he just didn't fancy showing up at Extreme Rules. It damages the wrestler when he's meant to be holding the title and he's not defending it because people don't believe in it. He comes across as weak for doing it. It damages the title because that title's now not being defended. It's now just something that a bloke carries around airports and he defends it once every 4 months when he fancies it. But it also it damages the brand itself, and it damages the company because it just looks stupid. Like, we're meant to have rules about defending it every 30 days, and yet, Brock was not defended for 4 months. Yeah, because he doesn't want to. Oh no, we could strip him, but we don't want to. You know, I don't know. And that's the end. I've sat down and done nearly an hour and a half of recording. It's pretty good for a podcast back. I sniffed a lot. I've apologised for that again. If you're still with me and if you've dealt with the sniffing, then cool. Cheers, you one person. Time to do my outro. So, social media links, you can find me Twitter and Instagram at Brazier25. It will be on, all this will be on the screen somewhere there-ish. You can't see me, so whatever. I did move my hands though. So Brazier25 on Twitter and Instagram for me personally. You can follow the Life Junkies on Twitter, _Life Junkies. You can also follow the Life Junkies on Facebook, the Life Junkies 25. You can get all our blogs, all our videos posted on there, and all of our podcasts are posted on there as in video form. TheLifeJunkies25.wordpress.com. As usual, I don't pay for any hostings of this, which is quite good because I've spent a few months, I've wasted money for a few months. So you get 1 or 2 episodes on the back of this. I don't know how anything else I'm putting up will push this episode back or push anything else back, but you can get back catalogues. All back catalogues of this podcast are available on YouTube. So if it's your first time listening to us, well done for making it through. You can listen to more of me rambling. There's another 14 episodes of this, all on YouTube, all on there. So go there. There'll be a link somewhere on the video. You'll be able to see it to YouTube playlists. And finally, if you are watching on YouTube, there will be a video up. I haven't yet decided what I'm going to put up because I haven't done any recent videos. But I will put something. I've put my WWE title revamp video up so many times. I might just put a Football Manager video up or something. I will decide tomorrow when I am editing and trying to post this. So thanks so much for listening if you've made it this far. I don't know if anyone ever has. And good night.